Check the weather. Mr. Phil Bernstein.
A few weeks ago, we ran out of coffee at my house. That's a problem. And there's a Whole Foods about a 10-minute walk away, so I decided to head down there and grab a bag for the morning. Grabbed my coat, walked out the front door, started walking, and it was 5 minutes into the trip when I looked up for the first time and realized that the skies were dark and threatening. I kept going. Got to the store, walked in, grabbed the coffee, paid at the register, and by the time I got back outside, the skies had opened up and it was pouring. The weather is a great metaphor for life. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, and there's not much you can do about it except grab an umbrella. Pepper Giordino, the author, said that. It's great advice, metaphorically and literally. At that moment, it would have been good advice literally, because it was literally raining and I literally had no umbrella. I was unprepared. So I wound up stuck in that Whole Foods for more than an hour, waiting for the rain to stop. It's a problem. I should have known better. I'm a sales trainer. I work, as Rob said, with advertising salespeople all over the United States. And each year, what I'm teaching them more than anything else is to be prepared. We have to prepare 200 marketing plans to present to 200 local business owners each year and try to parlay those into advertising sales. You got to be prepared for that. I've done about 1,600 of these presentations over the last 8 years, and I've learned a few things about how to deal with unexpected events. No battle plan survives its first contact with the enemy. Field Marshal Helmut Karl von Moltke said that in 1839. You can look it up. And whether it's a military battle or a business meeting, stuff happens. You've got to be ready for just about anything. So how do you prepare your staff and yourself for the unexpected events that turn up along the way? Chad Storley, writing in Harvard Business Review, recommends something called commander's intent. Commander's intent is a military strategy designed to keep your plan relevant in the face of chaos and constant change. With commander's intent, you decide in advance, you draw up in advance what a successful mission looks like. You decide who is responsible for what, when, where, how, and why. You give your team an objective to achieve and the tools to achieve that objective, and you help teach them to be able to improvise when the plan breaks down. Now, what's the best way to improvise? Rehearse. Role play. It works. It works for football teams. Football teams rehearse. That's what practice is. Every play the Philadelphia Eagles ran against the New England Patriots in the Super Bowl had been rehearsed and role played over and over again. Now, on game day, they didn't all go the way that they were drawn up in the huddle, but that was okay. The team had role played so many different scenarios. So often, they knew what to do when the plan broke down. Rehearsal works. It works for musicians as well. The best musicians can improvise because they practice. I'm a big Bruce Springsteen fan. And there's a Springsteen video of a concert he did in London at a place called Hyde Park. Now, Hyde Park has a stage, or at least it had a stage that day that was actually 2 stages. There was an upper stage where the band spent most of its time, and then a long staircase down to a lower stage. And on that lower stage, Springsteen could go down and sing to the crowd at crowd level. Now, during one song, I believe it was Glory Days, he went down that staircase and sang to the crowd, and then turned around and during an instrumental break came back up. But there was a problem. The problem was he was in his 60s and it was a long way back up. Halfway up, he realized he wasn't going to make it in time for the next verse. So he looked up at the band and he went like this. And the E Street Band, without missing a beat, played the entire instrumental break together, again, giving the boss enough time to get upstairs and in front of the mic for the next verse. It looked seamless. It looked like part of the show, and in the way, it was. That band had played that song so many times together They knew how to deal with it when the plan broke down. It's unexpected events. Now, there are known knowns, things that we know that we know. There are known unknowns. That is to say, there are things we know we don't know. But there are also unknown unknowns. There are things we don't know we don't know. Donald Rumsfeld said that, former Secretary of Defense. And here's where it applies. A few years ago, I got really ticked at the managing partner of a law firm. We were scheduled to present a marketing plan to him and his team at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday. His team showed up at 3. He showed up at 3:20 with no apology. I got started. He took out his cell phone, started texting. And for the next 15 minutes, as I tried to explain my marketing ideas to him, he was thumb typing and reading, thumb typing and reading. And then his phone rang, and he answered it. He answered it right there in front of me in the middle of my presentation. I know. Then he got up and he left the room. I didn't know what to do. I hadn't seen this move before. I looked at his assistant. His assistant signaled me to keep going, so I did. Eventually, he came back in, resumed texting. By this time, I was furious. I wanted to tell him exactly what I thought of his rudeness and disrespect. But something told me not to. So I just kept going, got to the end, asked him for a commitment, and that's when he dropped the bomb on me. He said, "I'm sorry. It's going to be a while before I can think about this. My wife is in Chicago, and she was in a car wreck this morning. She's in the hospital, and when this meeting is over, I've got about a 6-hour drive to go see her." Now that was an unknown unknown. I had no idea that was going on. Here I was thinking he was being disrespectful, when in fact, the fact that he showed up at all was a sign of his respect for me and his determination to keep his commitments. My anger melted away, replaced with a little bit of guilt. I felt petty thinking about this. And the lesson I got is hold your fire until you know exactly what's going on. There are things you don't know, you don't know. Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. Mike Tyson said that. Sometimes in business, you get punched in the face. In 2010, I had a terrific needs analysis meeting with a dentist. It went beautifully. I laughed at his jokes, he laughed at my jokes, I asked him good questions, he gave me great answers. Before the meeting was even over, I had a pretty good idea what kind of a marketing plan I was going to design for him when we got back together in 2 weeks. 2 weeks went by. I got back to Billings. I had 27 client meetings scheduled for that week. This one was going to be the easy sale. This was the slam dunk. But it wasn't. Something had changed. I knew that as soon as he walked in and shook hands with me without making eye contact. He sat down, finally looked up at me and went, "Okay, what do you got?" So I opened with a joke. No laugh. Launched into my pitch. Things went south in a hurry. He was rude and dismissive. I gave him a creative idea. He told me it was silly. It was kind of silly, but it was silly in a good way. He didn't mean in a good way. Things got worse and worse. I finally stumbled to the finish, asked him what he thought, and he said, "I don't know. I'll think about it and I'll let you know." And then he got up and walked out. I was stunned. This was my easy one. This was my slam dunk. And I had clanged it off the rim and into the stands. Felt like I'd been punched in the face. Had no idea what happened until the next day when his wife called to apologize. It turned out the day before our meeting, he had met with his accountant, and he had learned that his office manager had embezzled more than $100,000 from him. As you might imagine, he was in a lousy mood when he walked in the door to see me, and he wasn't going to buy anything from me or from anyone else. Now, how do you prepare for that? I had to think about that for a while, and I finally decided to change the way I opened my marketing plan presentations. From that day in 2010 until this day, I now open my presentations with a question. I'll look at the client and I'll say, Mr. and Ms. Client, it's been about 2 weeks since we last got together. Has anything changed? Is there any news to report? Asking that question has saved me an enormous amount of heartache over the last 8 years. I asked that question of a business owner once, and I learned he didn't own the business anymore. He had sold it the week before. Well, that was news. I asked that question of a marketing director, and I learned he wasn't the marketing director anymore. He had been demoted. His entire department reorganized while I was gone. I've asked that question, and what I've learned has sometimes caused me to change the strategy I recommend on the fly. A couple of times I've canceled the meeting entirely because there was just nothing left to talk about. You don't know what you don't know. You got to ask about these things. You got to prepare. And that's what I want to leave you with today. Ask questions, prepare, role play, practice, improvise when you need to, cancel the meeting if you have to. You need to know these things because you don't know what you don't know. Before you embark on a journey, check the weather. And don't forget to grab an umbrella. Mr. Toastmaster?
Thank you, Phil.
Thanks, Rob.